So today we have a very interesting topic for all of us, something that which is of big concern to us, and I have a very special guest who's going to just join me in a moment. Ask him to join me. The moment he comes in, and then you're going to have some great fun understanding something which concerns all of us. Good afternoon, Tushara. How are you? Hi, Saket. So good to see you.
Hey, hi
Yeah.
Tapan.
So all
So
the
good
way
to
from
see you.
US. Yeah. What's the time there right now?
No. I'm locked down in India, Tapan. I'm based in California, in Palo Alto, but I made
Yeah.
sure I'm locked down in India. I can say it's one of those rare times we can say being in India is much safer than being in the US.
That is actually very, very interesting. Yes, all the news that we hear actually got me very worried. And since I know that you're
Yeah.
mostly out of US, I was
Yes,
seriously
yes.
very, very worried, Saket. So, but good to have you here in India.
Thank you.
Now, for all my viewers, you would be happy to know that today the topic is cyber, cyber crime. And you'll be surprised to know that a cyber crime has become more lucrative than drugs, today in the world. That is how it is. You'll also be surprised to know that while we talk, no, one third of you would actually be getting attacked, somewhere or something would be happening to your system. It is that dangerous. And I have with me a good friend whom I actually say is a genius. Do you think of doing a startup while you're trying to finish your engineering, like in the last year of engineering? And Saket did that. He set up his own company, in the year 2012. And then, obviously, when you set up a company that young and make it big, you all in all the lists, be it Forbes or be it, whatever you call it, Fortune or Entrepreneurs Magazine, under 40, under 30, whatever you can think of. Imagine Saket has been there and done that, and set up his company in Silicon Valley, going from the startup that he did. An expert in cyber, one of the rare experts at such a young age who understands very well. In fact, I should think that people who are millennials would actually be very, very careful of cyber attacks and they may not be getting attacked at all. No, it is people like us who don't understand tech very well who may be getting attacked. But I was surprised to see that half of millennials actually have had a cyber attack, when I look at statistics. And let me give one interesting story before I start asking Saket some questions and make it interesting for all of you to hear what all is happening in the world. Way back, my father, and actually my father is more tech savvy, and my younger daughter, I think in the family, these two are the ones who really know how to play around with tech and get all the things done. He had a cyber attack and he lost some money, not much, but about 20, 30,000 rupees for some firm in US is where he got attacked, and he's in India. And that's the time I started thinking the risks have changed. We used to only think of pickpocketing a risk, but today cyber is a big risk. And for the first time in the country, we bought in retail cyber cover that time, and that was the reason. But then after being that cover, I realized that still people aren't very aware what's happening. And today, when lockdown is there, work from home has become prevalent, all our financial transactions are happening on mobile. Are we aware what kind of huge risks are we sitting on? No. So without much ado, let me get Saket into the conversation. Let me ask him, Saket, what is it that surprises you? No, you have into the cyber stuff and giving protection to all the Fortune 500 companies across the world. No, but as an individual, what is that surprises you about cyber, and what do you think really worries you at an individual level? I'd like to hear from you, and tell us something interesting that you've heard or seen in your career as you moved up trying to protect companies and people.
Tapan, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. It's truly an honor to be there in the same frame with you. I've been very lucky in my life, and that's the reason why some good things have happened. But young people like me only get to where they are with guidance from veterans like yourself. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's truly an honor to do this Instagram live with you. Moving to your question, Stefan, in terms of, I've been in this space for almost a decade now. I'm still 29, so I started taking my I started taking my trainings and workshops on cybersecurity from the first year of my engineering college back when I was 19 years of age. And I would say, without the surprise of most people, cyber has changed quite a lot, right? Because cybersecurity is a function of cyber, right? So if I were to just give that journey of cyber, and you'll probably know this better than me, Tapan, is, cyber used to be a back office automation tool in the late 90s, right? Where it was all about how can you make an Excel sheet, get an ERP, get a printout, and yeah, things will be, sorted and things around that, right? Then in the early 2000s, it suddenly became like, okay, this can also be used for business enablement, that I can reach out to my customers from mobile. I can go ahead and I can actually, use cyber to, take my top line up or bottom line down and, bottom line up and things around that. So, it was a business enablement. I think today we are at that space, Sapan, when you see the Fortune 20 companies and see 60% of them are cyber companies where they don't use cyber or technology for business enablement, but cyber is the business. Technology is the business that they're truly in, right? And I would say that that whole transformation where now cyber or technology or digital has become the centerpiece of any organization or any business plan that you would make, irrespective of any industry that you belong to, is the key reason why cybersecurity has become one of the most important things which is today discussed in the boardrooms. According to World Economic Forum of this year, Tapan, cybersecurity is the number one uh, man-made, risk that boards, that senior leaders and CEOs are worried around the world. And the change is really not much to do with cybersecurity, but to do with cyber, because now that it's become more and more popular and it's become the centerpiece of everything that we are doing, breaching into that has very dire consequences to both our personal lives and our professional lives. So that's what I've seen as a change. Unfortunately, we still we're not equipped enough, both from a not just from a technology perspective, but also from a awareness training. So the people, process, technology element, right? From all three vectors, there is still some catch up to do to be able to go ahead and actually come to a point where we can say that, yes, like today against fire casualty that might be there, or against, any kind of a specific, physical damage that would be there. I think we've come enough far way where we know how to tackle those situations. How do you mitigate those risks which are there? Cyber, I think we're still far off, Tapan. And again, that's my quick views around cyber, and then cyber security, how that's transforming.
Yeah, I think I see a comment from Satish. He's saying Allianz risk barometer suggested cyber is the biggest risk. I think Satish, you're right. As an insurer, no, I think this is right. And the problem of cyber is like, the clogging in your heart. You don't know it till it's too late. Till you, I think that is how it keeps on building up, all this malwares and all this phishing and all this, and you don't know till it is very, very late, which is there. And while Saket spoke about the journey of 2000, I was reminded in the 94, 95, Saket, I was an IT head. No, you'll be surprised to know. I knew DBase, Foxpro 2, yeah, and
Wow.
we had DOS, yeah, and Windows was just coming in. And I was super excited. I told my dad, I know IT and I really understand it very well. And he laughed. He said, in the 60s, we had the IBM frame in the US. And he said, I used to punch cards to get my programming done. And we used to punch so many cards as a programming. And that is how it happened. So the journey I've seen, but today I'm completely lost in this journey. In the initial stages, I thought I was an expert. But I stopped telling that I know tech, about 10 years back. I have just no clue how fast it's moving and how things are moving, But let's say if I'm an individual, and I think I'm very safe and secure. I have my phone, I'm using all my digital payments, and I'm using my iPads, I'm working from home. What risk, one, am I putting myself at? Two, I'm putting my organization at, because of some carelessness that I'll be doing. What do you think and have seen in this that is the biggest risk that a person does? Because if I look at data, 1 in 3 people have fallen for this phishing trap, or at least they've clicked on the phishing email and got their system compromised. So what is it that you would suggest based on experience?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tapan. In fact, I think especially the pre-COVID and the post-COVID era is a very clear demarcation in terms of cyber breaches also, as much as it is about physical breaches and physical security that we can think of. Just in the last 3 months, according to a report that came in from Symantec, the number of phishing emails and spams that have really shot up has been in the tune of almost 6,000%. Right? There are more than close to 15,000 domain names which have been registered in the name of COVID, in the name of coronavirus, etc., with a primary agenda of going ahead and duping people and doing fraud with people which are there. To your point about what risks does an individual possess, uh, I think if I were to count those risks, Tapan, it'll actually be a. I don't think we'll have enough time here. I think the bigger risk that an individual possesses is not understanding, and I don't want them to be an engineer, but even understanding the fundamentals of how a computer works or an email works, and what happens when you click on a link and how deadly that can be. Unfortunately, I still get people who come to me and tell me, and really smart people who come and tell me that, I can't be hacked because my phone has a fingerprint scanner and a hacker can't get through because he doesn't have my fingerprint, right? And again, it's not their fault, Tapan, because if you really think about it, our education system, I mean, even today, schools and colleges, of course, now not today because now everything is going online. But right before this, you actually had schools and colleges banning your cell phones, banning your laptops because because how do you use it in a very responsible way was never something which was taught to us. If you think about it, Tapan, right? Yourself, I mean, you're using Instagram, right? I mean, you're obviously privileged where you might have your Copcoms team who might have told you the right things and the wrong things to do here. But 99.9% of the people, right? They would learn how to use an Instagram by actually downloading it and just doing a trial and error. And one link there that they click on can actually be very fatal. And remember, we are living in a time where Jeff Bezos, the richest man on the planet, and arguably one of the smartest people on the planet, his private pictures were hacked from inside his cell phone without his knowledge. And with all that he could do, he couldn't do anything about it, right? So I'm just trying to say that, saying that, look how vulnerable you are, and I'm not trying to scare anybody here. I'm trying to give actual examples so that people understand that as huge of an opportunity is cyber, which brings together, I mean, there are now almost 4 billion people on the internet. I like saying this, now the average distance between these 4 billion people is literally 20 milliseconds, because that's the time you would take to send an email from one person to the other, right? So considering that is there, I think, unfortunately, because we've never been trained in knowing how cyber works, I think that's a much bigger worry than actually saying that, look, have an antivirus, have a two-factor authentication, have a firewall in place, etc., etc. So that is there. More specifically, I think from an individual perspective, if I give you some stories around, I actually have this multiple things happening. I think on an average, we get a couple of these reports every week from our customers or some senior executive from our customer saying they clicked on a link which said your billing will be stopped of Netflix because there has been some issue on the billing side. It's very natural, right? If you see an email which says billing@netflix.com, by the way, it's very easy to send an email from any email ID in the world to any email ID in the world. That's how SMTP works, right? So if you get an email saying billing@netflix.com, it says there's a payment issue, and if you don't resolve it, your account will be blocked. Very high odds that people will actually click on that. And the moment you click there, it asks you for your Netflix username and password. Now, you give that out. Now, on an average, Tapan, people, because you need complex passwords these days in wherever websites you go, you can't remember more than 3 complex passwords. So therefore, the password that you give out of Netflix, there's a high chance that you use that for your Instagram or your Facebook or your, things around that. So it becomes a very easy way by which, somebody can intrude into you, see the password, go on to something else. And then if they have an access to your email, you can actually click on forgot passwords on all social media and get back the stuff which is there. These kinds of frauds are very, very popular these days, Tapan, and something that I think most people should definitely be very, very wary about.
Unbelievable. I never thought so, Saket. You get so many messages, mails, and they look so authentic. In fact, we're surprised to know that luckily my CFO and me, we had been working together for so many years. We actually get mails saying that, no, please transfer this money immediately from my ID. He would call me and say, boss, what's wrong? Like, why do you want so much money suddenly transferred here? I said, what money? He said, no, I just got a mail. And this has happened once. It's a real story between us. It has happened at least 8 times in the past 4 years. A mail comes to him from my ID saying, please transfer the money. And then obviously my IT team, everybody gets into a lot of work to figure out how and what can be done on that. But this is interesting. Netflix or no, people would fall for it very like very easily. I think that is something. But the learning, if I listen to what you were saying, would be that I should not put in my password for anything, other than logging into the device that I have. So at least that can be, one caution. If somebody asking for a password, I should immediately get very cautious about, that is it the right thing to do or not. Will that help in some way, or do you think that?
You're right, Tapan. The unfortunate part is that, so let's take your own example. When you said you and your CFO have got this email so many times, I can absolutely tell you that whoever sent that email was not a very smart hacker. I'll tell you, if I were a hacker, what would I do for you, Tapan? Tapan, you're a very popular man. You're among the top voices of LinkedIn in 2019, and so many years. What I would do is and it's not very difficult to actually track your, where you're speaking, what sessions are you taking, right? It would be very simple where, I would actually send an email to your CFO from the organizer of the last, or saying that, look, Mr. CFO, I went to this event yesterday. It turned out very well. Looks like we'll get a lot of leads from there. I want a strategic partnership with them, and I've asked them for a pilot to be run between our Copcoms team and yourself. I'm copying my Copcom person, which will be a fake email ID, and give a small transfer of 10 lakh rupees as a pilot project to be able to see, what results they, approve of. I've approved of a metric there, and why don't you go ahead and do that? I want to see the results within the next 3 days of what they can achieve. The odds of the person actually doing the transfer, or executing on what you would want will go up exponentially, Tapan, and that's what a smart hacker would do. So I'm just like, again, not to scare you by any means, but I'm just saying that it is really so simple to do that. And most people would not even realize something
I'm
happened.
just praying to God that Saket is on the other side, not on the hacker side. We don't lost a lot of money. He is on the protection side, protecting people from getting hacked.
Tapan, by the way, and I probably, we didn't discuss this also in our briefing for this, but you guys are our customers. We actually do your security. Yeah. So I'm just letting you know that it's all good. Don't worry about it. You've got the right people securing
it. But you are providing security to so many Fortune 500 companies also, no? I think you're one of the leading security providers. So that is a good one. But in some of the big enterprise organizations, what is one thing you saw which really surprised you in terms of which got compromised or hacked without taking a name? If you can give some details, no? So it'll be interesting to know. In fact, I also have questions coming up from my liability head asking that, what in the COVID era are the cyber attacks that you're seeing? Because I think I have some good insurer professionals also logged in. They're trying to figure out as what risks are there and what is that they should look for devising a cover, or the cover is it good or not for them? Yes.
So you asked me two questions. The first one is a surprising hack. Let me talk to you in my career of a decade, Tapan, the most surprising and the most sophisticated hack that I have ever come across in my life. Very interestingly, it happened in Pune. So I'll tell you what. So there's a bank. We'll come to, it was public, so I can actually talk about it. This was the actual Cosmos Bank hack which happened. And not many people understand the sophistication of that attack. This happened in 11th August 2018, which is almost 2 years back now. And what happened there was, Tapan, that, the hackers were actually able to go ahead. And for years, they gathered the carding information or debit cards of a lot of Cosmos Bank users. 11th August 2018 was a Saturday. On a Saturday, between 120 minutes, around 2 hours, they did 15,000 transactions of withdrawing money from ATM networks around the world, to be more specific, 28 countries. And Tapan, look, you do global things also, and we all have global operations. Getting people in 28 countries on the same meeting of 120 minutes, we can imagine how big of a marathon that can be. Yes. You're talking about a breach which happened for these 2 hours, where there were 15,000 transactions in 28 countries, withdrawing $10 million in cash. Now, this is not sophistication. This is easy. Now, let me come to what was sophisticated about it. the hackers were able to go ahead and actually own the ATM switch, and they were inside the ATM network, and not only on the switch side of the ATM side, but also on the banking software side, where every time somebody did a swipe to take money out, the money did not get deducted from your bank balance. So imagine the degree of impact and the degree of control they had on the system, where you're taking money out and the money is not being deducted from your bank. Now, this was still not enough. This was $10 million lost. And the card authorities found that out, stopped it immediately. Still $10 million gone. This was Saturday evening. They get into a war room on Sunday of what's going on. And that's a big amount of money. And Cosmos Bank is actually one of the good cooperative banks which are there. But still, they got hacked badly. Monday morning, Tapan's second hack happened, where they had $1.4 million lost using a SWIFT transaction, going into a bank account in Hong Kong, and the money immediately getting withdrawn and dispersed from there. The number of people who have been caught till date after 2 years, and imagine how huge of an operation would this be, has been 0. And that is the, and this is not a science fiction movie. I mean, this qualifies to be a science fiction movie, which can be directed by Anurag Kashyap. But, this is not. And this is a fact. And this is what happened in Pune, in a bank, literally in the backyard, of a lot of us. And we couldn't do anything about it. So this was something very, very surprising of the degree of access. And as you said, right, cyber attacks like those heart diseases, where you don't know till a very long time. So for how much time were the hackers within the network of the bank? What all did they have access? More importantly, are they now out or not? You don't know the answers to that. And that makes it so scary. The second piece, post-COVID, you said, what are the attacks which are changing? I would say we've seen a surge in the type of attacks because of work from home, right? Because when people were working from their office, they at least had some degree of control in their network, in the environment which is there. You had a DMZ to actually differentiate between assets internally and outside, which was there. Now there is no DMZ, right? In most cases, right? You still try a VPN, etc., etc. But even to come to a VPN, you have to go through a router which is installed by an individual at their house, right? And that can be anything. You have a laptop which is being used by your kids, your parents, multiple things which are there. So that becomes a very different thing. Therefore, the world of cybersecurity is moving to a model, Tapan, called zero trust. What zero trust means is, see, earlier you used to have a network where laptops or servers or databases inside the network were the ones you could trust. Outside the network, you would not trust. In the last around 3 to 5 years, in fact, last year, the most popular search term of cybersecurity in Google was zero trust. What zero trust basically means is you don't trust anything, whether it's inside, whether it's outside your network, it doesn't matter. So the point I'm making there is that, that's where the world is going. The attacks, sophisticated attacks coming in, spear phishing coming in. I do know of, of groups investing heavily, not just in defensive, but even offensive cybersecurity. State-sponsored, etc. So many of those hacks are happening. So the point I'm trying to make there is that, I'm not trying to do any fear-mongering here, but I'm just talking about facts that I'm seeing on the ground. And, this was a very interesting prediction. This was by a Wired article that came in very recently. It was a Andy Greenberg article, incredible piece that I think everybody should read about, which he basically said that, the next big, huge cyber hack that shakes the world is less than 6 months away. So we had WannaCry, we had NotPetya. NotPetya had a recorded damage of $10 billion. And recorded is important because most of it was not recorded. It's because, most companies are not regulated. You guys are because you're in financial services. Most other industries are not. When it comes to reporting cyber hacks, which are there. And therefore, it's not a very good space to be in, but at the same time, that's an opportunity. I know of companies and individuals, make this a differentiator or a competitive advantage while onboarding their customers, saying, hey, we are one of the most secured companies out there because these are the precautions that we are taking. And this is what Maersk and so many other companies said. Tapan, did I answer both of your questions?
Amazing. Matlab, it was more like going through a a novel thriller, no, the way I would look at it. Unbelievable. The Cosmos story, and Cosmos has been our corporate agent for a long, long time. No, what happened, and we had physically been there, seen, no, how disturbing it could be, and like you said, nobody has been caught, and across the world this happened. Or the personal story of Jeff Bezos's, personal programs getting hacked, or the one they're talking about, still maybe there the biggest attack is still coming. I also somehow believe that, Saket, not for any other reason, but I believe that with all this work from home happening and this COVID, forcing people to move digital very strong, very fast, without realizing how to take care of their systems and what not to do, is actually going to lead to a huge attack. And I also agree to that point of view. And 6 months, 4 months, 3 months has to be seen. But one of the predictions is that it will happen. No. So two things which are very, very. I don't think the world is ready for it. One, we have seen this pandemic. COVID has shown that, no, irrespective of how much billions you spent on your defense, the world is not ready for it. Second, cyber also, I somehow believe, world does not see it as such a huge risk. Like people do not see pandemic as a huge risk, no, and that is why most customers didn't have a pandemic cover. No, I think people are not ready and they don't understand what can happen. But you're right, Saket. That may be a reality, and it can be coming very, very soon. But let us say if this is going to happen, Saket, then what as an individual should I do? If you, or as an organization, that we should do, to ensure that we are able to secure ourselves? Because what you say is right. I think a lot of people spoke about Bill Gates' speech when he gave on pandemic before it happened, that he could see it coming, and that time nobody really, took it very seriously, and today the world is struggling with it. But this point that you mentioned on a big cyber attack coming, I am somehow convinced that it is. So what should we do next?
So firstly, I think, if I were to give a generic advice at a personal and an enterprise level, and you know this, Tapan, there are very, very different ways of looking at things, but there are some common principles you can apply. For me, the number one rule is always something which is secured by design. Now, what that means is that, see, when you walk into an aircraft, one of the first things that, of course, now after a while, we've taken security to a next level of an aircraft, so we don't think about it. But if you go like 10 years back, 20 years back, when there's still a lot of crashes happening and things around that, right? One of the key things that you would always look at is the aircraft secured or not? What model of the aircraft? Who's the manufacturer of the aircraft? How sensitive are they about the security best practices that needs to be followed, right? For example, today as a consumer, if you look at WebEx versus Zoom versus Microsoft Teams, right? Just the historical trend, and I'm not implying which product is better than the other, just the historical trend of number of breaches that have been reported for each one of them does speak about who takes the security of their platform more seriously. Historically, Zoom, in the recent past especially, has had far more number of zero-day vulnerabilities reported on them, using which not only your Zoom sessions get hacked, but also your own laptop, the whole data, which is running on your laptop, can easily be stolen if you're running a particular version of Zoom on your Mac or your Windows. Now, such 0 days, it's not that it has not happened with a WebEx or Microsoft Teams in the past, but you'll have to see how many of them have happened. And in the recent past, in the last 6 months, in the last 12 months, what has happened? And then as a consumer, take that call. And why is that important is because when you start looking at security, it just becomes a very, very important piece to be, I think that awareness is starting to come. I think there's this app called House Party, or I think House something, which a lot of people were using on the house or doing their private parties, right? Virtually, of course. And there was this big widespread around the House Party app is not safe. They're taking the data out. And I could suddenly see the ratings falling down and people actually saying that, look, I don't want to use it if it's actually taking my data. The funny thing is, out there, you don't need to rely on an expert or a newspaper article or an Instagram live. Simply go to settings, privacy, and go to which all apps are taking access to your SMSs, to your picture, to your location settings. Disable all of them when you don't need it. I'll give a small example. Tapan, in this Instagram live, you remember in the beginning we were trying to connect, but it didn't connect. I'll
Yes.
tell you the reason why. When I clicked on join, it asked me that Instagram doesn't have an access to your camera or your microphone. When I said yes to both of them, the request got then enabled, but then we had to rejoin and we had to redo that because all my application on my phone, none of them have an access to my camera. I only enabled it right now when I wanted to start the conversation with you. Right after this, I will disable it. So knowing what knowing what permissions you are voluntarily giving is a very, very important aspect for your mobile phones. Having said that, it does not mean that if you say no to all the permissions, they can't see anything. Remember, your phone has an accelerometer, your gyroscope, a proximity sensor, right? I mean, all of these and many more sensors which are there. Operating systems don't take permission for that. Any app on your phone can take an access to your gyroscope and accelerometer, using which they can anytime find out whether you're in a car, you are walking, you are sitting down, you are chatting, you're on a live, interaction like this. It's very easy because the angle of the camera being calibrated and the speed at which the phone is moving are enough to attributes to say with more than 90% of certainty, what is the activity that you're doing. So coming back, I'm just trying to say the best practices, and at the same time, knowing that even after those best practices, there will be some amount of information that the application sitting on your phone is taking. At the same time, for emails, for personals, one of our very, very, very high recommendation is to have two-factor authentication on for all your social media, for all your devices, for all your email. I mean, it's something which is a non-negotiable. I mean, you need to do that because it reduces your probability of your email being breached by more than 95%. One control, 95% the impact. So that's for the personal side of things. On the enterprise side of things, I would say, Taman, and I mean, obviously that is my area of expertise to be very honest, because that's what we've been doing with various companies around the world. I would not say what are the controls to enable or buy a firewall or buy an antivirus, because those are all like a cat and mouse game. You can buy 5 things, there'll be 50 more things by which you can be attacked. I've seen the most important things are two folds in a large organization. One is the awareness and the interest at the board and the CEO level of cybersecurity. Because if that is not there, everything else falls down, right? Because it's like the culture of a company, right? It needs to be owned by the leader of the organization. Cybersecurity is exactly like that, right? So number one, the board and the CEO of the organization being very, very sensitized. And I've had CEOs, I've presented to, I don't know, probably 200 CEOs last year. I mean, because I've had like one sessions of 15, 20 CEOs also, in just because they're so worried. I mean, Jamie Dimon publicly last year said that my number one worry, and he's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, who spends $1 billion on cybersecurity. He says, my number one worry is cybersecurity. Well, of course, he didn't know coronavirus back then, but that's what he said, right? And the second piece is having the right CISO in place, who in most cases should be reporting to the board, the CEO, or the CFO or the CRO. In most cases, not the CIO, because that gives you the independence. And at the same time, the CISO being an enabler or a business enabler, not just a compliance guy who checks his boxes, not just a guy who was an IT admin, you made him the CISO because you needed a CISO. Somebody who's been in security, what most people don't realize is like a law field or accounting field. You can't get some generalist and make them a lawyer or your general counsel, because you need a general counsel. You need somebody who has got that experience of 10, 15, 20 years. And then you need to elevate that person or get somebody from the outside to be able. So I would say these two big chunks, everything else, getting the right team, the right processes, the right technology is a byproduct of having the right CEO and the board and the right CISO in place. Does that answer your question, sir?
Amazing, Saket. I think you really gave a very, very comprehensive answer. CEO, I do not know if in our company in the right place or not, but the CISO is, and I'm happy listening to you, but then I know that my company in the right hands is because you are protecting it from the cyber perspective. I saw a lot of questions and comments come on the screen. One was saying that please record this, we want to hear the whole thing again, which I think is right. We'll record it and put it on our social media, because I think Saket has really mentioned a very, very interesting point. The second comment which came in was that no, that if they disable, then the app does not work. So you heard what Saket said. He disables it. When the app has to work, he enables it only for that period and then he disables it again. No. So if that answers your question, because as you rightly said, if you don't disable it, you're putting it all on for a long, long time, and that is allowing access to a lot of people, which may not be required. So I think the way the conversation is going, Saket, we have to carry on for a long, long time, but there is a constraint of time, at our end. But let me just ask you one last comment before we finish it off, Saket. How much money do you think in attacks, cyber attacks, has been lost across the world, in India, let's say in the last 2 years' time?
There was an estimate, first of all, let's put it like this. I need to divide that into two parts. One is the recorded loss, and the other is unrecorded loss. Because as I told you, most companies don't report the losses that happen because they see that as a major reputational damage, especially considering almost every company is taking the digital route that they have. Sorry, are you there? Yeah. When you take the digital route, reporting a breach becomes a big problem. There was an estimate last year. We crossed. If I remember it correctly, I think the total impact was supposed to be north of close to $100 billion of impact that was recorded. The non-recorded impact, I can assure you, is much larger. That is actually happening. So the numbers are staggering, Tapan, to be honest. I have seen companies really go from champions and at the same time going even bankrupt. And there are companies which they don't publicly say that, but that a lot of it has to do with their competitors were snooping in on their big bids which were happening, or they were snooping into their IP. And that happens cross country also, where we've seen, without naming countries, they actually copy IP being made in India, being made in US, and actually get the exact same replica of that product at probably 20% or 40% the price. And it really becomes very difficult to compete in those things which are there. So we've seen all of that happening. The impact is only rising. And as Steve Jobs says, the future belongs to those who can see it today. So I would say this is definitely one of those things that across the spectrum, personal, professional, enterprise, individual, we need to be careful of. And at the same time, that has massive opportunities for anybody who wants to look at it like that.
So if I put it in Indian rupees, you're talking 8 lakh crore lost. No,
Yes.
Unbelievable is the amount of money get lost. Have you ever lost money because cyber attack on you? Whatever little small.
Well, not that I know of. There is a saying, Tapan. There's a saying in the world of cybersecurity. There are only two types of people on the planet. One who know that they've been attacked, the other who don't. In other, so if I say I've never been attacked or I've never been hacked, it will only talk about me being naive about what is potentially possible out there. I would say I don't know of myself being attacked as of now. And even if I am, I would not be very surprised given the sophistication of a lot of dynamic stuff which is happening. And if I am saying that, Tapan, you can imagine the state of the rest of the individual.
Yeah. Well, the person with kind of information and knowledge that you have. Andres, I think we had a great time talking to you and a lot of interesting information, comments, and by looking at what people are writing, I see that all of them are loving it. I think you put things in the right perspective. You have shown what has happened, what can happen. And the point you said, either you have been attacked or you already attacked and you do not know about it. No, that is the point which is there. So the points you mentioned in terms of your personal phone, go to security, remove access till you require it. Enterprise, look for a good CISO, look for a good cover. No, and since still it can happen, have a good insurance cover and ensure that you be happy, be secure. Because like Saket said, I also strongly believe a huge attack is on the way. Because it's very natural when so many systems have got exposed, because of the COVID era, and everybody accessing from wherever because they want business to run, customer to serve. I think security has got compromised somewhere. It's like a field day when you go to the migration of animals happening in Africa. I think the lions have a field day; they're able to kill and pick up as they want and they choose. I think right now this is the status that we are in. We have exposed ourselves so much that I think hackers will be having a field day. So let us be safe, let's be secure, let's not take it lightly. It's a huge risk. And as mentioned by Satish in the comment dimension, in Allianz today is rated as the biggest risk, in terms of all the risks that they look into it. So thanks a lot, Saket. Brilliant speaking to you. Really good. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Tapan. It's truly an